the MLB Draft is just days away, we have Ethan Smith with the Locked On Pirates podcast. The Pirates hold the #1 pick in the upcoming draft, and Ethan is joining us now. Ethan, are you on the edge of your seat?
Just a little bit, considering my computer is on a seat right now and I'm leaning towards it. So, yeah, I am physically and mentally on the edge of my seat with the idea that Paul Skeens or Dylan Cruz is likely going to be a Pittsburgh Pirate in 3 days.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm very excited about the opportunity for both of those guys. They both offer unique skill sets that I haven't seen covering this team for the past 3 or 4 years. So, excitement, I think, is even an understatement on this one, considering I've been covering it all week.
And so I don't know how many LSU games that you have been able to watch, but I guess a few. Have you watched any of them? I guess even just like the World Series ones, probably?
I've watched a good number of Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz. A lot of it has been those highlights that you see on Twitter of the good stuff they do. I've also seen some of the bad stuff they do. Also living in Georgia, they played UGA a couple of times over the past year or two, so I've been able to watch those games locally. And then I've ventured out during the College World Series to watch them play and analyze what was possible for the Pirates to have at one, and I was impressed by leaps and bounds by that College World Series win. Obviously, being a Georgia fan since I lived down here, it was nice to see LSU beat Florida that bad with help from Dylan Cruz. Obviously, they didn't need Paul Skeens in that game, which was also kind of helpful for us because a lot of people have worries about his workload. I don't. I will say it right now for the record, as a Pirates fan and covering this team, I would love them to take Paul Skeens. I just don't think they're going to have an opportunity to take a guy at his level pitching again. But I would not be mad at Dylan Cruz either.
And so just kind of breaking down the skill set that they have that you're talking about, obviously, you can't go wrong with either one. So from that outside perspective and just kind of watching it, what is that kind of like for you and just seeing like how that can translate to the major leagues soon?
Well, I mean, you have scouts out there that have said Paul Skeens could be in a Major League Baseball bullpen by the end of this year. Now, is that likely? No. They're going to probably shut him down and get him used to the pitching every 5 days workload. But I'd put a realistic ETA on these guys at the end of 2024. That's just how good both of these guys are. They can come up and make an immediate impact. For those of you that cover baseball or watch baseball very specifically, you know about the minor league system and how much of a grind it is playing 6 days in a row every week. So that's something that they're going to have to get used to doing. But I would expect that both of them will start at AA in their respective minor league careers, quickly make moves up to AAA right below the major league level. And then, like I said, August, September of next year, you're probably going to see these guys making a real contribution, be it Pittsburgh or Washington. And by 2025, I think they're going to be mainstays they're on. So for the Pittsburgh Pirates, you're getting a guy either in Cruz or Skeens, if that's your decision, that is going to make an immediate impact for you very quickly, which is something we see with 2020 first-round pick Henry Davis, who was one of the quicker first-round picks to ever get to the major league level. So it'd be a very similar scenario with Paul Skeens or Dylan Cruz because they're just that good.
And so a lot of people talk about how, you don't take pitchers high in round one, but with Paul Skeens, does that just kind of go out the door just in general?
Well, when you see the comparisons of Steven Strasburg with Paul Skeens, 1 overall back in 2009, working with him, obviously traded him later on in his career to Houston. Now he's in New York, but you don't see pitchers like Paul Skeens every now and then. And I've talked to people in the Locked On Podcast Network. I've talked to scouts about it, and they say that he's just on a different level than these other pitchers. And you're always going to find pitching at any round of the Major League Draft. I mean, you look at the Angels last year, they drafted 20 pitchers in 20 rounds. And you can never have enough pitching, and especially when you're looking at a guy like Paul Skeens for the Pittsburgh Pirates, they're a low-spending baseball team. They're not going to go out and spend $25 million a year on a guy like Shohei Ohtani or Lucas Giolito or Max Scherzer or Justin Verlander, those big contracts we see. The Pirates are never going to do that. So take the opportunity to get Paul Skeens for virtually free, probably around that $9.5 million area for his slot value, just below the slot value, and just run with it and see where it goes. I know there's a worry injury-wise for guys like that. Tommy John surgery looms with a lot of these young pitchers, but when you have a talent like Skeens available to you for practically free, you might as well take it.
Oh, yeah. And so the latest mock draft everybody talks about from Perfect Game, I think just yesterday, it had Paul Skeens at number 1. Obviously, that's fluctuated a lot with, you have Max Clark at some point at number 1. You have Dylan Cruz at some point at number 1. So if you were kind of sitting in that chair for the Pirates on draft night, who would you choose?
Probably Paul Skeens. Dylan Cruz is a phenomenal talent, and you never draft for need at number 1, but it kind of feels like with these two guys, you kind of are, just because with Paul Skeens, as I mentioned, he's a guy that could virtually be in a bullpen by the end of this year. Now, will that happen? Probably not. But Paul Skeens is the kind of guy that you could stick in that rotation at the end of 2024. 2025 comes around. You're talking about a rotation for this Pirates team that features Mitch Keller, who's had a breakout season. Roansy Contreras just got sent down to work on some stuff. We saw Keller do that last year, so maybe he's a part of that rotation. And I've even said Skeens would be the best pitching prospect and arguably the best prospect in the Pirates system if he's drafted. Dylan Cruz would probably be number 1 or number 2. But I do think you can find offensive players later in the draft, and especially if you can get Skeens a little under slot value, which is $9.7 million for that number 1 overall pick. I mentioned that 9.5 number. That's what I think they're going to chase for with Skeens. That's what I want them to do. I want them to take Paul Skeens because you just aren't going to find a generational talent like Skeens every day in the draft.
And so obviously a lot of people have talked about just Max Clark in general, just because, you can get him kind of for a lower price. And you're just talking about like the Pirates, they aren't going to pay a lot. So you're talking about that.
Yeah, so Max Clark is that guy where you go across history and a lot of teams with the number 1 pick will take that 18-year-old prep guy to save money to use further on in the draft. They did this with Henry Davis, although he was a catcher out of Louisville at the time. There was only 5 rounds in that 2020 draft, so they didn't really have to worry about slot value too much. But when you're getting into the 20-round draft again, like we've seen over the last couple of years, that slot value means a lot. It could be the difference between you signing your 4th or 5th round pick based off of that slot value. So Max Clark, I think, is an option, but based off of the timeline of what the Pirates are trying to do competitively, off of what Ben Cherington has done with this team, I don't know if he wants to take a guy that would be 4 or 5 years away. He did so last year with Termarr Johnson, which was a different thing that he's really never done. He loves college players. I wouldn't completely write off Max Clark, but I would say that it would be shocking if they took Clark 1-1. But I also wouldn't be upset either because he's a very phenomenal talent as well. Pretty much if you're taking one of those top 4 guys between Skeens, Cruz, Langford, or Clark, I think you're happy as a Pirates fan.
And so many have talked about like the youth movement with the Pirates and how they play young players. They're not afraid to play young players. So no matter what, if you take Skeens or Cruz or Clark, do you think that they could even just move up even quicker than anyone thinks they would?
Well, Skeens and Cruz definitely, I think, are on that trajectory. I think those are guys that are going to be here within a year and a half to 2 years. Wyatt Langford, possibility as well. Maybe he takes that extra year at the minor league level. Max Clark is that guy you're going to have to wait for a while, I think. He'd probably be here when he's about 21, 22 years old. He'd probably start in the lower levels of the system like rookie ball and low A and high A, and then just gradually make his way up. Termarr Johnson was drafted last year by the Pittsburgh Pirates at number 4 overall, considered one of the better hitters in the draft, and he's still at single A Greensboro right now. And this was almost a year to the date. So if you're looking for fast trajectory, Langford, Skeens, and Cruz will offer that for you. If you're looking for more of a let's groom this kid, let's make sure he's good, let's keep him healthy, that's your Max Clark, and you probably wouldn't see him until 2026, 2027 at the earliest.
Gotcha. And so given what the Pirates have done so far, I know that they lost their last 2, I think. But just saying, like, do you think going with either Cruz or Skeens they'll be the difference maker when they get there? Like, that's the difference maker in that organization?
Well, and that's what I think is the interesting thing, is because there's pros to each of the guys, and there's not really any cons. Dylan Cruz is going to be a guy that's going to come in. He's going to get contact hitting for you. He's going to do just about everything. But when you look at the structure of how baseball is now, pitching is paramount. Every team has injuries with pitching. Right now, the Pirates have 5 of their possible 9 starters on the IL right now. So pitching is a big thing. But if you're telling me that at some point the Pirates are going to be in a wild card series, which is now 3 games instead of 1, thankfully for Pirates fans. If you're telling me the first 2 games of the series, I get Mitch Keller and Paul Skeens as my pitchers, I'm going to take my bet on that every single day. And I think that's what you're looking at for Skeens, is you're expecting him to at least be a top 3 rotation guy. If he is a 4 or 5, great. That means your rotation's probably really good and you're asking him to do a lot less. Dylan Cruz is also one of those guys I think that's going to change your offense completely. And I wouldn't be mad at either of them, but I do think these guys are difference makers in whatever system they end up in.
And so hypothetically, for the Pirates, if you draft Paul Skeens, is there any way that he could get that like Shohei Ohtani type feeling? Like, do you think, since like what he did at Air Force could translate, could he do that, you think? Would they let him?
I'd be reluctant to say that, just because he did go this entire year without hitting. So then trying to groom this kid back into being a two-way player would be kind of difficult. I think you'd want to focus more on his pitching. The Pirates actually do have a kid who was a two-way player that was a commit to Clemson for football, and Bubba Chandler, who they did it last year with him. They let him kind of do both things, but now he's just a pitcher. So I do think the Pirates don't really want to shoot for the stars there and try to turn him into a Shohei Ohtani. If he did, I'd be perfectly fine with it. But I do think that they're just going to focus on him being a pitcher and just make sure that he is honed down on all of his things, stays healthy, and can be a top rotation option for this team for the next half decade.
So before I let you go, if Skeens or Cruz goes number 1, just give me a little insight on this organization, what they're going to come into, what they're going to be expected to do, and obviously you are a huge Pittsburgh fan. So what is it about Pittsburgh that will just draw them there and make them love it?
Well, one, we have great food in Pittsburgh, first of all, but when you're looking at this organization and what we've seen from this team over the past couple of years, it's been a lot of losing. But now you're finally in 2023 starting to see some of that winning. They had the best record in the National League at one point. Since then, they've been on a pretty bad pace, but they're still 40-48. They're still on a much better pace than they have been in past years. When you're Paul Skeens, you're looking at joining a group that features Roansy Contreras, Mitch Keller, Luis Ortiz, Quinn Priester, Jared Jones, Anthony Solometto, Thomas Harrington. I mean, the list goes on about the pitching prospects they have. If you're Dylan Cruz, I mean, the idea of having a Dylan Cruz, Jack Sawinski, and Brian Reynolds outfield is very nice to me. And then you're also going to get to probably play with Andrew McCutchen at some point, because I don't know if he's nearing retirement, but I'm sure he'll talk to him at some point. What's drawing them to this is the fact that they're not going to be expected to be the top guy right away. Now, at some point, you're going to want them to be the top guy, but they're just going to be surrounded by so many good players like O'Neal Cruz, Ke'Bryan Hayes, Termar Johnson, even when he makes that call up. You're looking at all the players the Pirates have, and it's almost like Dylan Cruz and Paul Skeens are just like an accessory that you're just adding to the outfit at this point, but that accessory just so happens to be a $5,000 Rolex watch that everybody looks at and expects to be really good.
So what about the city in general? Like, what are they going to love about? I've never been to Pittsburgh. And so what about just like the city and like the area and like the food, just anything that you think they would be like, this is a little bit different than Louisiana?
Well, first of all, we put fries and coleslaw on sandwiches, so I think that'll be a big deal. We also put fries in our salad. You have the Strip District right out there on in Pittsburgh with all the fish markets and all the restaurants. You have the original Primanti brothers down there. Obviously, you have 2 other big sports teams in the town with the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Pittsburgh Steelers, so they're going to really learn very quickly that people in Pittsburgh care about their sports teams, and if you're really good, they're going to care about you too. You're also going to meet the Renegades of the Rotunda. They dress up every single game. They're the Pirates, the Renegades of the Rotunda. They have the swords. We have the home run sword celebration, which was donated to the team by the Renegades of the Rotunda. And I mean, it's a great city to be in. It's a great sports atmosphere, and when the Pirates are winning, they sell out PNC Park, and it's the most beautiful ballpark in all of baseball. You're going to get to see that backdrop 82 times a year. If you make playoffs, even more than that, and you're going to get to see what Pittsburgh fans do when you compete, when you play well, and when you turn yourself into a star. And that's what Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz are. And if they come in and they give you valuable playing time, and they show that they care about the city and the team, the city's going to care for them right back.
Anthony DiNardo from the North Shore 9 podcast, who is all about the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Pirates hold the #1 pick in the upcoming draft, and Anthony is joining us now. So are you on the edge of your seat? Are you kind of like, let's get this over with, or are you just kind of anticipating?
Kind of both, to be honest. I do want to get it over with because with all the pre-draft rumors going on and speculation of who it's going to be, who doesn't want to be a Pirate, everything you're hearing, I kind of want to get it over with. But I mean, this is a fun time. Having the #1 overall pick, some really good options to choose from.
And so you said you've been doing this earlier. We talked that you've been doing this since 2016. Is this the most exciting draft, you would say, or what do you think?
I mean, I'll put it this way. It's usually not exciting to have the #1 overall pick because it means you had a really bad season.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of it. But again, having the #1 overall pick with the talent that, is presented in this draft is exciting in the sense of, how much it can change this rebuild.
So looking from the outside perspective from how good LSU was this year and talking about the talent of Cruz and Skeens. I know that we just talked with someone who's also a Pirates fan, but he was all about Skeens. But just breaking down both of their talents and just going with that, like what did you kind of see from throughout the year from both of them, throughout the College World Series, and just kind of now?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it was more or less like Dylan Cruz or bust for pretty much all the season. And heading into this year, that's what you heard. It's Dylan Cruz. That's the guy you want. I mean, the bat is, you hear your terms thrown out, generational, right? Generational talent in Dylan Cruz. And like the one that, some of the analysts have mentioned that we talked with, don't get like prospect fatigue. It's going to be Dylan Cruz. There's going to be names pop up, kind of ignore it, keep in the forefront of Dylan Cruz. But then this guy, Paul Skeens, just decided to have one of the best college seasons in like history on the pitching side. And, it's really been one of the things where like the past 2-3 weeks, I've really started to think about maybe it's not just, prospect fatigue and this Paul Skeens is for real. And, you hear the comps thrown out there of guys like, he'd be better than Garrett Cole, #1 overall draft pick Pirate fans are familiar with. Mm-hmm. Someone like him, Steve Strasburg, like this generational type of talents coming out in, the pitching side. So again, it's really interesting. You have two players, both from LSU, of course, and the term generational is thrown out on both of them. So it's tough. It's tough to really decide like which one you really want. And it's the great internal debate right now in Pirates fans.
And so obviously everybody says you don't want to take a pitcher too high in round 1, but with Paul Skeens, does it kind of just go out the door with him, or is it more of like a Dylan Cruz because injuries could happen?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, obviously you feel more safe with a Dylan Cruz, and I feel like if you match him up equally, right? If you feel safe with either one of them, not just as you feel safe, but if you feel as either one of them is perfect for #1 talent, you might err to caution and say, let's go with Cruz because, the risk is mitigated. With Paul Skeens, there's more risk involved. But again, you're talking about someone who could be an ace in MLB, probably the best pitcher on the Pirates today if he was drafted and signed right away. And that's something you can get really excited for. But again, with Dylan Cruz, you hear the same thing as far as generational bat. And, some of the outfield, there's more of them to your availability. You can find MLB bats here and there. They're not as expensive as, top end pitching. So it's one of the things to debate. This is probably your only way the Pirates are going to get a Paul Skeens type pitcher in their organization. So there's that, effect to look into. But then again, Dylan Cruz has had one of the best, seasons out there. And the talent he has, I just feel as if you just go ahead and go after that person. Take him, have a good day with it, and move forward.
And so obviously there are so many mock drafts that go around, especially this week. Everybody has a different opinion. And I know we've been looking at the perfect game win, and obviously on Monday it was like Dylan Cruz, then it was Max Clark, then it's Paul Skeens. And apparently today it's still Paul Skeens. So it's like, But obviously, like, any of them could go #1, even if you add Wyatt Langford in there. And so as a Pirates fan, if you were sitting there with the Pirates on Sunday night, who would you choose and why would you choose them?
Now, listen, we're hearing all the names out there, especially like you said right now. All 5 of the top picks predicted has been linked to the Pirates. I don't know what they're going to do. I think that's what's making a lot of Pirates fans nervous because they don't really know what's going to happen. But if it were me, right, I have the GM hat on. I'm taking Dylan Cruz again, just for the fact that I was very comfortable 6 months ago having Dylan Cruz on this team. I still am at this point in time. I think he is a very, very good talent. And I think what you're seeing right now, too, is because he's the man on top, right? And what you're finding is a lot of people are finding ways to pick his game apart. And at the same time, using the same things to put people up on a higher level. Just go with Dylan Cruz. Don't overthink it. Just take Dylan Cruz. If that's me, that's what I'm doing.
And I know with they always talk about the Pirates right now, whenever they're in that youth movement, they're not afraid to pull up younger players or play younger players at all. So do you think they kind of fit in that role? Do you think they're going to be the difference makers if they do get pulled up early?
Yeah, and that's also the interesting thing. I think with both players, you can certainly see a point where they're both playing for the Pittsburgh Pirates as soon as next year. Again, as far as talent-wise, I think Skeens could probably play right now if he were to get picked. But obviously, they're probably not going to have that happen. He's going to rest and not, had any more innings on him this year. But yeah, that's what also makes this very interesting because they're in hopefully the end part of this rebuild where next year they're going to start winning. And with that, you could see one of these two guys part of that plan as early as next year. So that's also a big reason why I'm looking more towards the college bats and not so much as the high schoolers. As you mentioned earlier as well. So yeah, certainly.
And so we've talked a lot about just kind of like in the newsroom and just around and talking to people and LSU people. And a lot of people have said, there are a lot of people and players in the major leagues now. You can compare to Dylan Cruz. Obviously, everybody has their opinion, but there's just no one you really can compare to Paul Skeens. And I know that I think in your podcast a few weeks ago, you were like, you can't really compare, but at the same time, Dylan Cruz is going to make more of an impact. But also, Paul Skeens could be the one that takes you to the World Series. So,
right, yeah, that's a great debate. As mentioned, Dylan Cruz can play every single day. He's part of your team. He gives you a chance to win every single day. Where Paul Skeens is going to do it once every 5 days. But I think where the big difference is just like you said, you can do enough to get into the playoffs. And I think every team that puts together a solid enough team, you can find a way to get in the playoffs, especially with expanded wild cards. But once you're in the playoffs, you probably want a guy like Paul Skeens on your team to take you to, advance into the World Series and such. So that's the difference. And again, that's what makes this so interesting. Do you go Dylan Cruz, who's an everyday player, or you take Paul Skeens, who could potentially get you over that hump? As we talked to someone on our show at the time, the way he put it was, if you have a Paul Skeens, the chances are the other team doesn't. And that gives you an advantage every time he's pitching for you in the World Series. And then you mentioned with the comps, there's really not such a comp. Steve Osborne wanted to point at, there really hasn't been a pitching prospect since him in the draft. And you saw what Steven Strasburg did for the Nationals during their playoff and World Series runs. So again, that's certainly reason and valid enough reason to take a Paul Skeens. And if you pick either one of those two, there's no wrong answer.
And so, okay, bear with me with this. It's a hypothetical question, but everybody obviously talks about Shohei Ohtani, and could Paul Skeens do that just like he did at Air Force? Do you think the Pirates, if they go with him, would they let him do what he's doing?
That's also very interesting. Now, a few years ago, they drafted, now he was a high schooler, but he had plans to play football in Clemson and Bubba Chandler, and they gave him the opportunity to play both. He was a two-way player. They did end that this year. They scrapped it so he can focus on pitching, kind of like what Paul Skeens, he scrapped the hitting just to focus on pitching. Thing is, you saw where he went when he did that, and he just skyrocketed as far as the talent goes. I'm not saying the Pirates won't do it, but I kind of look at it this way. There's only one Shohei Ohtani, and that's it. And what he does is amazing, and I know everyone wants to be the next Shohei Ohtani. I just don't see it. So you know what? Give me the best you are at your pitching, and I'm perfectly okay with it.
And so before I let you go, I know that you're in Florida right now, and you're living in Florida, but did you grow up kind of near Pittsburgh?
Yes, about 40 miles outside of it.
Okay, so you got to sell me on Pittsburgh. If obviously you're either going to take Dylan Cruz or Skeens, you're confident in that. So you're going to get an LSU guy. no matter what. They've been in Louisiana just a little bit, obviously Dylan Cruz longer than Skeens, but sell me on Pittsburgh. Why are they going to love it? What about the organization they're going to fit in? Like, what is it about Pittsburgh that they have to just absolutely go?
Sure. Now, Pittsburgh, as far as the city goes, in my eyes, it's an amazing city. It's very up and coming. I think it's very, very underrated, especially with the stuff that's able to do in there as well. But Pittsburgh is like a great city in its sense, but also you're talking about one of the best sports towns there are. Now, granted, the Pirates haven't been a great organization for some time, so there's a lot of people that are down on the Pirates. But what I'll say to that is, you see what they can do when they win. When the Pirates in 13, 14, and 15 were, into the playoffs and the wild card games and such, that city rallied around that team. You saw the blackout PNC. If you recognize and understand the Johnny Cueto game when he dropped the baseball and everyone started cheering at Cueto, it's such a great sports town. And again, it's one of the reasons why Andrew McCutchen came back, take a discount, and wants to hopefully finish his career there, because of the love of the city that he has and the connection with sports towns in the USA. Mm-hmm. So that's something. And again, if you play well, the people will love you.
And obviously, it's hard to compare Alec Box to anything else. I am a Clemson fan, so I did go to Alec Box a few times, and I got to see the atmosphere, and not a lot compared to that atmosphere. Do you think that the Pirates atmosphere compares anything to that?
Atmosphere of recent times hasn't been great, right? Again, this team hasn't been winning in about 5 years. So, as of right now, today, every night you show up, there's not a whole lot of fans there. But again, this hopeful rebound is on the turn, right? It's hopefully getting into the winning ways. This year, we saw what they did in April. They were 20-8 at one point in time, best record in baseball. And just look at that point in time in April, the fans were coming. There were all kinds of hype and buzz in Pittsburgh. Granted, since then, they haven't played so well. But hey, Dylan Cruz, Paul Skeens, come to Pittsburgh, one of you, start turning things around and playing well. Things could change in that sense. And yes, like when they do win, again, PNC Park is one of the better stadiums in baseball, as there is also. And right, again, going back to 13, 14, 15, when this team is playing well, the people are out there. It certainly is. I mean, again, to have an entire stadium cheering Cueto when every single person is wearing black, I mean, you never see that in baseball. That's a college football environment that was going on.
Well, they both have that reputation to hopefully make PNC full again, no matter which one you pick.
I would love to see it.
Well, Anthony, thank you so much for joining me. Good luck on Sunday. I know you're going to be biting your nails probably, but there is no wrong pick at this point.